Welcome, 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 welcome to Root Speak. This is the very first episode, and I'm really, really happy to be here and launch this, what I believe is very important channel. Root Speak is going to be focused on international, worldwide black communities, the latest news and analysis right here on Root Speak. So with that, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to be looking at the African Union. I think it's a great place to start. So let's take a look at it. The African Union. I, honestly speaking, I did not know much about the African Union. I didn't even really know that they had big plans or what they were doing. In fact, I would even argue that I thought the African Union was probably dead in the water. How wrong was I? So I came across this article by the finance minister of Mauritius, country in Africa. And I want to just hone in a little bit on what the finance minister said. So let's take a look at it. Africa, he pointed out, is a land of opportunities, and its combined GDP is expected to grow around 4%. And remember, that's combined GDP, all the African countries, 4% in 23 and 24. It accounts for 30% of the world's mineral resources, 20% of the world's population. By 2030, the African continent is expected to be approximately 1.7 billion people. That's incredible. The key point is what comes below that, which you can see here, I've highlighted in yellow, the entry of the African Union, the AU, as a permanent member to the G20 summit. Marks an incredible historical milestone for Africa. And now the G20 is officially known as the G21. So all the African countries coming together to form this one formidable bloc. And now we got the G21. So that's pretty interesting. The government of Mauritius will continue, as it says here, to fulfill its promise of delivering on the Africa we want, in line with the vision of the African Union Commission's 2063 agenda. Again, I had no idea about a 2063 agenda, any agenda for that matter. But there is an agenda, and we are going to look into it and see what this agenda is all about. Well, first of all, what is the African Union? Well, the African Union is a continental body consisting of 55 member states, as you can see, that make up the countries of the African continent. We will take a look at some of the member states right now. It was officially launched in 2002 as a successor to the Organization of African Unity. I'm not going to read all this, but the AU is rooted in Pan-Africanism, as we can see here, and its design or objectives is really to promote this unity and solidarity amongst African states. As you can see here, it has a number of very important, I think, objectives. Let's take a look at the member states. So on the member states, we see 55, again, member states, which I think is pretty much all the African countries have signed on to this. They're split up into 5 geographical regions, which is interesting, and I believe it's just Northwest, East, South, and Central Africa. You can see Central Africa here. Most of the countries, Burundi, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Gabon, all came in 1963. Remember 1963, 25th of May is the beginning of the OAU, right? So they were already in very, very early. A couple of late comers here. 1968, slightly late, Equatorial Guinea. And the Republic of Sao Tome and Principe, 1975. Eastern Africa, same thing. Lots of people coming in 1963. Lots of countries, sorry. Look at this one here. South Sudan, the Republic of South Sudan, 27th of July, 2011. So that is, I believe, the newest republic in the African continent. Here you can see Seychelles came in kind of late 1976, but pretty much most of the Eastern Africa were in. Northern Africa, as you can see, same thing. I think the Morocco one is a miss. I think this is a miss. This is a typo, because I think it's supposed to say January 30th, 1963. No real latecomers except this one here, Sahrawi Republic. I've never heard of that. What is the Sahrawi Republic? And they came in 1982, so they've been around for a while. So I went to try to see if I could find where it is, and I got this, Western Sahara. I guess that's another name for it. Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Very interesting. We move now to the member states of Southern Africa. And as you can see, all these came in a lot later. 1990, of course, South Africa in 1994, Zimbabwe in 1980. And this was because of, Southern Africa really had the apartheid system, and it was very much entrenched. The other African countries got their independence in the late 1950s and 1960s, but Southern Africa took a little bit longer to fight off the apartheid system in many of their countries. But they're all now in. Western Africa, we have same thing, a lot of them coming in 63. Gambia in 65 there. We got a 1975 Cabo Verde. I've never heard of Cabo Verde. The Republic of Cabo Verde, 1975. Of course, I was curious, so I found a travel site. It's an island on the west coast of the Atlantic. It's one of the most sought after tourism havens. Okay. It's blessed by the sun throughout the year. Okay, and we got some pictures here, as you can see. Oh, wow. It is very beautiful. Very beautiful indeed. And there's some more there. Are those Africans swimming? Oh, they are probably the tourists. No, I'm just playing. Some nice pictures there. Do they have anything of the people? Yep. A little bit of the culture here. So, as you can see, Portuguese influenced, Creole. Creole is the mother tongue of almost the entire population of Cape Verde. That's pretty interesting there. So, that's the African Union. It's the 55 countries of Africa that have come together and have signed on. And what have they signed on to? Well, they've signed on to this agenda, this 2063 agenda, the Africa we want, it's called. What is this agenda? It's a blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Again, Pan-Africanism. It's based on the principle of Pan-Africanism, which is good. That is what the OAU was based on. But I think here really explains it well, to prioritize inclusive social and economic development, continental and regional integration, democratic governance, and peace and security, amongst other issues, aimed at repositioning Africa to become a dominant player in the global arena. Very nice. So again, you can go to the website for yourself and take a look at this agenda. But I think it's a very important thing for Africans to keep their eye on. What are some of the projects? What are some of the goals? And you can see right here, Agenda 2063. These are some of the flagship products. These are very interesting. So you have an integrated high-speed train network connecting all African capitals. I mean, that's a pretty bold project. Commodity strategy, the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is something we will get back to after this. Remember this acronym, AFCFTA. An African passport. Now, this is something that African people have been talking about for a long time. This ability to have a national, sorry, a continental passport where you can travel between African countries freely. You don't need visas. So this is very good in terms of people being able to move freely in Africa. And I think that is something that will be very welcome. So that's very interesting. So this channel, we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on the African Union. Rest assured about that. What else? Silencing the guns by 2020. What's that? Ending all wars, civil conflicts, gender-based violence, violent conflicts, and the prevention of genocide in the continent by 2020. Okay. Are there any African countries that are engaged in wars, civil conflicts, gender-based violence, violent conflicts now? We're in 2023, October 2023. The answer is yes. And we're going to look at some of that a little bit later when we look at the latest report that just came out on October 3rd, yesterday, by the, I believe it was UNHCR, right? But let's finish looking at this. We have an Inga Dam project. Wow. And this must, obviously, if you're trying to create an economic zone, which is what is trying to be created here, then obviously you're going to need electricity, you're going to need infrastructure, and this is what a lot of these flagship projects are doing. Here you have a single African air transport market promoting intra-regional connectivity between the capital cities of Africa. Very nice. An economic forum bringing together policymakers, private sector, academia, and civil society to reflect on accelerating Africa's socio-economic development. Very nice. African financial institutions, accelerating economic development through the establishment of organizations. This is one I'll be very interested to see if the continent is going to adopt a central bank model, if you will. That would be very interesting. It doesn't mention here any creation of a central bank, but you have to sort of guess that probably that's the direction where it's going. Will African countries have the ability to print their own money? This is a big problem that's happening, particularly in the French-speaking or the former French colonies in Africa. We see that with Niger, Gabon, some of these places which had coups recently. We find out that the money is printed by the French. The money is in French banks. It's very, very, very bizarre, and definitely not a sign that someone is sovereign or free. You know, if someone else is determining your money, that is crazy. Then we have Pan-African E-Network. We have a university. We have an outer space strategy, strengthening Africa's use of outer space to bolster development in critical sectors, cybersecurity, and a great African museum. Right? That's to preserve the culture. So that's pretty interesting. All this is on their websites. I just want to say at this point, that this is happening. This is not something that is, being proposed. It's happening. The 2063 agenda started in 2013. It's a 50-year plan, 2013 to 2063. We're already 10 years, and I'm just finding about this now, as I'm sure many of you will be as well. So this is something that is happening. This is the future of Africa, right here, laid out here in the African Union. I just wish that they would have done a better job of promoting it. Quite frankly, um, when I go, for example, to their YouTube page, as you can see here, they only have 23,000 subscribers. How long have they been on? They've been doing this for, if I go to about, they joined, as you can see here, January 5th of 2012. So they've been on YouTube for 10 years. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm being too critical, but I just feel that 24,000 subscribers. I mean, I will look and see where else they are, what other media platforms that they're on, and take a look. Maybe they just don't have a great YouTube presence. But I just feel that 23,000 subscribers, 10 years, and especially something like this with an agenda so large and so big, you would think that there would be millions, tens of millions of subscribers to the African Union channel, but I guess not. Um, and then I want to highlight this particular leadership forum that's occurring right now. Actually, it started, if I'm not mistaken, it's happening between the 4th and the 6th. Yep, here we go. The 4th or the 6th of the Africa Tourism Leadership Forum and Awards going on right now in Botswana. Again, links in the description to this. This is very interesting. And here, as you can see at the bottom, I've highlighted here the AFC-FTA Forum on Tourist Creators and Cultural Industries. Where did we see that before? Well, we saw it when we looked at this, when we looked at the flagship projects, we saw this African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. So you can see that this is related to it. And this is all about tourism and bringing leaders together. If we can just see a little bit about the program, 2023 program. Very intense program, a lot of networking, a lot of panels. We can see there. So again, this African Renaissance is really taking place, and I don't want to assume that most people didn't know about this. I'd like to think that I am on top of the news and I see what's going on, but I had no idea about this. And this is, I think, very promising. It looks good in writing. It looks nice on the websites. The goals are good. I think a lot of Africans can get on board with this and agree to this. I talked about the passport thing earlier. So this is really good. And like I said in this channel, we will definitely be following the African Union and highlighting their progress, going on this thing with them, highlighting different organizations that are doing things to promote this new integrated socially and economically Africa, right? Which is something that I think most people can get behind. So with that, we're just going to cover some other news. One thing the African Union is doing is it's sending a election monitoring team to Liberia for Liberia's upcoming elections, which are happening on October 10th. So that is something. Liberia, in case some of you are not aware of where it is, there it is. It's a relatively small, one of the smallest African countries. It's right there on the west coast. If we get a closer up of it, you can see that it's surrounded by Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Cote d'Ivoire. It's tucked in there right nicely. Liberia has a very interesting history. I'm not going to get into it right now, but the elections there are very important that are coming up right now. And again, on this channel, we will be following up and checking out the elections. The other issue is that and I mentioned it earlier, the UNHCR has come out with a report yesterday, October 3rd, I believe, and this new report analyzed the migration for 2022. And this is very interesting because uh, it was a record breaking year for displaced people around the world, right? A 19.1% increase, as you see there. And I believe the total amount of displaced people for 2022, when you add up all the numbers, the total numbers is 108 million people, ladies and gentlemen, that have been displaced from their home country due to wars and conflicts, climate change, or climate disasters, I should say, but basically war and conflict and turmoil and economic downturns in their own home countries. And this is, this is very alarming. Very, very alarming indeed. Uh, Sorry, I just got a little bit lost there. And one place where we are seeing an escalation of this type of conflict is in the Sudan. And the Sudan, is one of those African countries that for most of the time that it's been independent, it's been very much in civil war. Of course, as you saw earlier on the member states, Sudan was split into two because of this war between basically the North and the South, and now you have the South Sudan and basically the North Sudan. But there's still turmoil and grief in Sudan. It started in April, it's continuing, and as you can see already 5.4 million people have been displaced by fierce fighting that broke out in the country in April. And the Sudan situation is very interesting because it's not just a civil war between government forces and opposition forces, but even there's regional conflicts between different groups of people, ethnic conflicts, if you will, that's happening at the same time. And I think this is a serious humanitarian crisis. It's one that we all need to pay attention to, and indeed the African countries in particular, particularly since Sudan is part of the African Union, we really need to take this into consideration and to prevent it from becoming, we don't want to use the word genocide, but it's definitely becoming a very, very unstable situation and something that the African and international communities are going to have to look at, before it gets worse. We don't want a repeat of some of the genocides that have happened in the past. So this is a very important escalating crisis that's happening right now. And as I said, 5.4 million people, 5.4 million have already been displaced from their homeland since April. The war started in April. Of course, there is Ukraine as well. That accounts for a lot of the displacements that are happening around the world with the Ukrainian war and other conflicts, Afghanistan's, other parts of Africa, such as Ethiopia, for example. These are all areas that are still dealing with this sort of wars and conflicts, etc. And you remember one of the goals of the African Union was to actually end all of these conflicts and wars and genocides by 2020. So that's one thing where we can look at and see that they have not been successful in achieving that particular milestone. Okay, it's obviously not an easy situation and not an easy thing to completely eradicate. But by and large, I think overall, when you look at all the African countries, the overwhelming majority of African countries pretty much have democratic policies and principles in play, free elections, etc. We just talked about the Liberian election, for example, that's coming up. Okay. Next, we are going to look at the country of Sierra Leone. And let me just bring this up real quick. This is the president of Sierra Leone, President Bio. He recently, actually, I think 3 or 4 months ago, came into power, came into office, and Sierra Leone just secured a $100 million loan. Now, that's a lot of money. When I saw this, I said, "Oh gosh, I gotta look into this." Um, so it's a $100 million, no collateral, non-collateral loan. And what is it for? It is for sending 1,000 graduates, 1,000 students from Sierra Leone to the USA and Canada to study STEM subjects, right? As well as AI and also MBA programs in these fields. So that's incredible. I mean, that's the type of thing Africa needs. It needs that type of investment into its young people to build that talent that's needed in order to create this vision of an Africa that the African Union has put forward on their website and in their mission statement. So I thought this was really interesting. And I wanted to know, well, where did this money come from? Like, where did this money come from? And very interesting, it does say in the article here that it was facilitated, and I'm not sure what the word facilitated means, but in this context, but it was facilitated by the SOS Necotech Center of Excellence. Okay, so I went to obviously check them out. Let's take a look. Necotech Center of Excellence. Okay, very interesting. When I go to look, empowering Africa's youth to transform business and foster continental change through global education. Okay, so they're in the business of really preparing young people for higher education. So this is really interesting. And then, of course, let's see who is behind this. And I found this particularly interesting. Let me just go to the founding members. You all are going to love this. Look who some of the founding members of Necotech Center of Excellence is. Okay, first of all, it was founded by Isaac Hayes, the late Isaac Hayes, who, I did not know this, he had become a Ghanaian chief. And I don't know whether this is his wife or his daughter, probably his daughter. She looks young. Probably the daughter. She's also called Princess. So they co-founded it with Denzel Washington. But wait a minute. Let's scroll down. Who else is here? John Travolta. Yes, there's another surprise when I go lower in a second. Bob Johnson, of course, most most Americans should know who he is. The former owner of BET, billionaire. The Reverend Alfredi Johnson, I've never heard of him, but he's there. Let's scroll down and see what we got. What we got? We got Tom Cruise, baby. Tom. This is almost like a joke. Tom Cruise is there. Butch Lewis, a boxing promoter. Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson. Wow. Okay. These are some of the founding members, founding partners. I don't know whether it means that these people gave money, but I would assume so, or they at least fundraise to get money. But this I thought was very interesting. Now, I think this is a very good example of how continental Africans and diasporan Africans can work together, you see? Because this money, facilitated by Necotech, goes to Sierra Leonean students. 1,000 of them, they come to the US, they can graduate. And the deal is, once they graduate, they come back to their home country and work in their home country, bring that talent back into the country. And I think this is a very positive thing. Again, $100 million. $100 million. Not a million, not 1.5 million, not even 10 million. 10 million would be great. $100 million. So again, this channel is going to be following Necotech for sure, you know, for sure. And finally, on the last thing I just want to mention is that coming up, I'll mention it again in future videos, but coming up is the Global Black Impact Summit, which is starting on November 30th right through to December 1st. This is a very interesting group as well. And again, this is very much networking, but it's not just networking. I'm not going to go and open the programs. You guys can check it yourself. But it's networking, yes, but it's also education centered around building wealth. And I think that is, that's great. And obviously, I will be following this organization and what they're doing, and will let you guys know more about what it's doing. So with that, I think that's good. That's your news for basically October 4, October 3rd, 2023. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Be safe and be well. Thank you very much.